G'day everyone, Aaron from Mango here. Today I want to quickly run through some customization for numerical values in your data and how we can transform those values from so a plain raw number into localized number formats that will help your users understand your data a little bit easier, and also allows you to use the data in different ways, such as retaining raw formatting for use in links while still displaying the localized language-sensitive numbering in your pop-ups. So here's a quick example I've got here of a country population map of the world. And if we click on a different region, what we'll see is some population information, areas in hectares, square kilometers, and square miles, population density, and some coordinates there. Of decimal degrees coordinates of that location. So as you can see here, in Russia, the number is formatted with spaces as digit separators, and we have a comma separator for the decimal point. Whereas if we click over here on the United Kingdom, what we'll see now is we have comma separators for the digit groupings, and we have point separators for the decimals. And if we click around to a few more countries, what we can see is that for each country I'm clicking on, I'm getting the localized version of the number formatting. So for instance, Germany here, the point separators are used for digit grouping, while commas are used for the decimal. So what we can see in our data, let me open that up. Go to the original data source. And here's the raw data, and I'll open up the table. What we can see here, I have area and population, and this is where I'm drawing that information from. And these are raw, unformatted numbers. It's just a plain number. Of course, in your data sets, you need to store numbers in this format. You can't have text, you can't have dashes, unless it's signifying a negative number, of course. And you can't have any other characters other than these numbers. If you do, we're going to recognize those fields as a text field and treat it as a text field, which will prevent you from doing visualizations such as this, where we need to use the number format to create a color ramp of population here from the smallest population through to the largest population. So that's quantity styling. So if you would like to use that quantity styling, we need a number field to work with. So if your data had commas through it, because maybe commas is your 1000 separator in your current your number formatting for your region, if that's in the data table, then we're going to read that as text because commas are not part of the set of numbers that we need. But we still want to be able to do things like this. We still want to be able to format it for readability, for usability, and we want to be able to tailor that display to the desired audience. You know, our audience, for example, in this map could be anyone. Everyone clicking on this map can see the number in their regional formatting that's specific to their language. It's also possible rather to get to, for some scripts, you can actually transform these raw numbers in, say, the Latin alphabet into other scripts, such as Chinese script, Devanagari script, Thai, Arabic, Persian, so on. There's a range of different scripts we could transform this into for display purposes. For the purposes of this demo map, we're just using the localized region for each one. Now, how do I do it for each different country and different area? How am I allowing that number formatting to change? We only have one set of data. We only have one column of numbers. You can see in the data table, there is no other numbers for population and area. And so what I'm going to show you today is how we can look at what we call the locale string method to transform numbers into specific regions. Now this data set, I'm lucky in that it has an ISO 2 region code. And what I'm actually doing is using this region code for each feature and I'm inserting it into the locale string method. So this is a JavaScript method that is utilized within Mango, able to be utilized by wrapping a method within an equation in the pop-up editor. So we're going to start with a number. So for example, we're taking our attribute, which is population, and then we're going to apply this method and apply a locale code. You can use a full locale code such as this one. So this is NGB, which is English, Great Britain. But I could also use the straight country code here, which is GB, as long as it's in that ISO2 format. So as we saw here, we have this field of every country's ISO2 code, and I can call that as part of the equation. So this is the path, what we need to set up originally. We have an attribute wrapped in brackets, and then we append to locale string country code. And so in this case, Great Britain. And we wrap that in the pop-up in an equation wrapper, which is these hash bracket top and tails. And then that's going to process that in the JavaScript and return you what you need. Now, because we have an ISO2 here, in my example, we have pop 2005 and ISO2. So those are going to be my attributes. So I can change this to pop 2005. I can change this, this to ISO2. And what that will do when it's processed in the pop-up, it's going to convert that population into the raw number from the dataset table, and it's going to process for the same feature the ISO2 code. And so now this is going to process this number string into the locale we desire. So let's look at how that works inside the pop-up editor. So again, I'll just do a quick example. We want to click on Nigeria here, and we see that's the formatting. We want to click in here on Bolivia. Again, same formatting. Let's have a look at, say, Portugal. And we see the different formatting that's specific to that locale. So let's have a look at the pop-up editor. So this is a custom pop-up, which means I can customize the layout. So what we can see in this one, I've prepared for each different number format, number attribute rather, the population and the area. So here, as I showed in the example, we've got population 2005 to locale string ISO2. So ISO2, as we can see, I can grab that here. I can render that out. ISO2 for Antigua and Barbuda is AG. So that's going to insert the population value. It's going to add the ISO2 country code. And then that's going to bring us the localized formatting in this preview here. For area, I'm doing the same thing. We have area. What I'm doing here is in the data, it's actually I can utilize other equation formats to transform those values. So the area that's recorded in the data table is in thousands of hectares. So the raw area is actually 44, but we know this is stored as an abbreviation of thousands of hectares. So we can use this calculator while we're applying this localization method. We can actually also add some simple math to this. So I'm multiplying that by 1,000 so that I can get 1,000 hectares. I'm then dividing that in the next one by 100, and this will give us the square kilometer value. And I'm also, in the third option here, I'm dividing it to get the square mile value. And this gives everyone, in this example, we have a variety of area formats that some people will be familiar with, others won't. So it helps understandability. What we can also see is that for each value, we are applying this locale string. So all of those values are getting the appropriate decimal and 1,000 digit group separators. And as you can see here, I'm not doing anything for the lat and long coordinates from the data. They're just displayed as is because that is the desired formatting. So that's as simple as that to get your values into localized formatting. You can, of course, type these in manually if you wanted to specify a particular localization for the entire value set. So for this example, if I do ENGB, it's the same because that's the same as what it was before. FR, we can see that that value changes. We lose the decimal, the comma separator here. We can also use, as I said, the ISO 2 country code in isolation, so GB, and we'll see that comma separator returned. And of course, if I make a mistake here, I'm going to get an error. So this is how we pass the equation. If there's something wrong within the equation, you'll see a little error. It's often easier to construct these outside of Mango in your text editor, for example, and you can prepare it like this one. It's a bit easier to understand. You can make sure that your formatting is right. You've got no spaces. As I said, we like to keep things neat and tidy, so bracketing around things. We need to follow JavaScript notation here. This is all described in the documentation below, but in my preference, it's easier to work with in a sheet or a document external to Mango, and then paste those in so that if you do have a mistake, you just see that mistake once and you don't get the error a lot. What I'm also going to have a look at is links. One benefit of using this method is that you can retain raw formatting for when you need to use an attribute value, say, in a link. So say in our data set we have an ID field, and one of the attribute values is this, 555.392.813. This also corresponds to a unique ID on my website where I have a PDF, for example. So imagine that was the PDF name, which links to a particular feature, and in that feature is the attribute ID equals 555.392.813. So rather than manually doing these links, I can, of course, use that attribute placeholder in the pop-up. And let me add the PDF there. So I could use this URL in my pop-up, and this will then render out in the pop-up when when the user clicks on a feature, and it will give me the full URL to the document related to that feature. This is really, you can also do this with images, you can do this with other documents, any URL. If you have a unique identifier that matches a column in your data, you can use that across your whole data set. Now, if I wanted to display that number in the pop-up for another purpose, maybe this was just readability, or maybe it's used in another way, maybe I need to use it in an equation, maybe I need to use it to document something else, and I want to have my localized formatting, or any formatting, I want it to show 2 decimals, if that was the case, if that needed it. So if you format that as a number in the formatting page, so let's go back to formatting here. Now, if I had selected, say, 5 decimal places here, or I want to format it as pounds, meters, any of these preset formats we offer here for the basic formatting, what that will do is it's actually going to affect the way that the URL would be populated. So if we put this ID in, if that has formatting applied, it's going to apply into that URL as well. So we don't want that to happen, because that URL is not going to work. If that's the file name, ID underscore 555.392.813, then this one with the commas inserted by our formatting is not going to work. So the locale string allows us to keep that raw number so we can retain the correct URL. And this also allows us at the same time to display the locale sensitive number for your users where it's needed. So in this example, we might want to display the number in that format, but we might want to display the link without, the URL. We obviously can't have extra characters or digits in there that don't exist in the URL. So this method allows you to, one, display numbers in a context that your users will best understand, and then also get around these issues of having to, say, include a second column of the same data, one with the formatting and one without the formatting. That would make the data a little bit more complicated to maintain. So this is a method that lets you keep one column of data and use it for different purposes, for display or for links to suit your audience. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch, support@mangamap.com. As I said, the documentation is below, and I also have a link to the international components. If you're not sure of your locale, you can look through this range. It has all the locales in the world for all languages, and what you can say is we're looking for this Java locale. So, for example, the Switzerland language in Italy is IT-CH in capitals. So that would be, if we want to display all our number formatting, so we have point decimal separator, we have comma grouping separator. If that was the one we wanted, we'd take that locale and we could insert it into our pop-up. If I wanted to enforce that single locale across the entire number range. And as you can see, that's a little bit different than the others. So I hope that's helpful, and happy mapping.